Oops. Oops. Hey guys, happy Christmas and happy 2025. I hope you guys have had a lovely break, spending time with your family or friends. It's currently been raining like non-stop here for the past 2 weeks, and it's been truthfully quite depressing, and I've just been kind of cooped up in my room in a while, so I thought I would just do sort of like a very cozy sit down and talk with you guys. I feel like I don't really do these type of videos often. I have many ideas in my head, but they never seem to see the light of day just because I'm a bit scared of sharing my thoughts to the void, which is the internet, which might be surprising to some of you guys since I've been kind of creating content for the past few years now. But this year I really want to be more experimental and personal on this channel, so I thought of sitting down and sharing with you guys my 2025 books to be read, share my journal setup, and as well as my New Year's resolution with you. I don't know if it's just me finally feeling like I'm 25, but I feel like I've gotten a lot more sentimental this year. So one of the ways that I've been kind of exploring that is through junk journaling. I'm not really that strict on myself on using these as my everyday journals. In fact, I'm thinking I might end up filling up all of these in the span of 2 to 3 years. Who really knows? I ended up buying both of these from 𝙤𝙤𝙤𝙤 bookstore. I'm sure you can really get it anywhere. My current favorite one is this Voyages journal, and what I really love about this is how versatile and customizable it is. It actually consists of 3 different types of notebooks and a little pocket film inside that is kind of secured by like a little rubber band, and once I'm finished with it, it's going to be quite easy to just buy a new notebook and put it inside this. I've kind of adorned it with stickers that I've collected for the past few years. I decided to customize the rubber band with this GG keychain from Kiki's delivery service that was given to me by my cousin, and as well as this random tomato keychain. I just thought it looked quite cute. The inside of this is pretty cool. We first have the lined notebook, and I mostly use this as more of a diary sort of format. Add any question prompts that I kind of encounter, whether it be on TikTok or, you know, just any sort of like thought-provoking questions that I can use as journal prompts here and then. And the second notebook is the dotted one. Mostly put things that I've experienced or encountered, or things that I find interesting, such as listing down the movies that I want to watch or have watched, and I like putting little stars and comments here and there with red ink. I also like to put my quote-unquote bookshelf or my to be read or current reads in here as well, which I'll talk about a little later on. And I also like to put my own, I guess, little judgment on things in the form of coloring stars and little red inked comments. And finally, for the last notebook, because it has no patterns, I use it as my junk journal space, or also just a place where I can doodle. Now, one of the things about me is that I love to create things or get creative. I love making use of my notebooks to just be able to create art unapologetically and in a more traditional way. It's something that I've been lately craving, since as someone who creates content on the internet, most of my creative work to just be created digitally, obviously, which is fine, but I feel like making mistakes on digital media tend to be more obvious, and because it's more obvious, I tend to put a little bit more pressure on myself on making things look perfect. In that sense, I feel like I do end up putting too much time in perfecting things instead of just kind of accepting it and sort of living with those flaws. Whereas creating things out of traditional materials like paper, you just have to accept that you've made a mistake and move on. And sometimes these mistakes can even seem more beautiful and intentional. And for me, I think that's pretty awesome. So lately, what I like to do is collect junk and trinkets throughout the week or maybe even months and create something beautiful out of it. I think it's such a great way to give purpose out of things that would have ended up in the bin anyways, and such a visually interesting way for me to look back and say, hey, I can't believe I actually did that, or oh, I remember doing this. So one of the things that I've put down on this book as well is my 2025 resolutions. One of my goals for this year is to read at least 10 books. I know that may not be a lot for some people, but it is for me because one of my toxic traits lately is doom scrolling. I feel like for the past few years my attention span has really deteriorated thanks to social media. I'm sure some of you guys can relate, and I really need to find a way to address that. And I remember how I used to love reading so much, and I don't know when it stopped. So today's gonna be the year to fix that. So I've been kind of on the hunt for books to read but also to collect to display in my shelf. So these are the books that I have. I'm currently only reading like 3 out of 5 of these, but I really want to collect more. At the moment, I'm actually currently reading 2 books, one that I borrowed from the library and one on my Kindle. The first one being something that the first one, which I bought on my Kindle, is The Kites by Romain Gary. And I actually found out about this book through one of my favorite content creators lately named Melissa. I'm reading this so far and I'm like really enjoying it, so I'm keen to read some more of her recommendations. Kind of a little more than halfway in finishing it. Not to spoil it too much, I think it's a very wholesome read despite the setting that the characters are currently in. It's very thoughtfully written and tastefully funny in all the right moments. I feel like this book just sort of exceeds warmth and comfort to me. I definitely think it's a very good spring and summer read, which is very fitting to me right now because it's currently summer here in Australia. The other book that I'm reading though is a little bit of a polar opposite. It is Dracula by Bram Stoker. And you can probably guess why I'm reading this at the moment. It's mostly because of me recently watching the latest Nosferatu movie, which by the way, I definitely recommend you guys watching it. It's very cinematically beautiful, but just be warned. I also just had a funny realization that my consumption of vampire literature and media ranges from that Nosferatu movie, Twilight, then that Hotel Transylvania animation movie. But anyways, I've been really enjoying it so far, despite it being written in 1897, so it's a definite classic. I was initially afraid that I was gonna have a hard time reading this, but I'm surprisingly enjoying it and actually been finding it hard to sort of find a way to stop. The way it's narrated is through a series of telegram letters, journal entries, and newspaper articles, and it frequently jumps from one character perspective to another, which I find an interesting format, so it kind of leaves you on the edge of your seat by the end of each chapter. In terms of my TBR, I do have quite a list taken from mostly again Melissa, but also other creators. I think my next read will be Tuesdays with Maury by Mitch Albom and Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. I'm very keen to read this because I have read Normal People and Conversations with Friends, and I kind of like the way that she writes, so I'm very interested in reading this. I know this book has been popular lately, so I hope I don't get disappointed, and yeah, I don't really have any expectations for this. But if you do have any other book recommendations, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Now, I guess in terms of my New Year's resolutions, I like to break them down into different categories, so whether it be physical health, mental well-being, education, finance, relationships, and career. I do have quite a bit in here. Some of them are quite personal to me, so I'll probably just share the ones that I feel comfortable with. In terms of my physicality, I want to consistently exercise maybe 3 to 5 times a week. this year. I think I've been somewhat consistent with this for the past 3 months. I found that I just feel a lot better, physically and mentally speaking. For an introvert also, I surprisingly found that I enjoy doing workout classes more and, playing badminton with my community here. My other goal is to increase my protein intake, and someone who doesn't really actively reach out and eating meat and being lactose intolerant, I do have to get a little bit creative in the way that I intake my protein. Now, in terms of my mental well-being, I put down to sleep at least 7 to 8 hours a day. I'll see how that goes. I also want to practice mindfulness and gratitude more frequently. I also want to engage in more free and healthy habits this year to avoid doom scrolling, like what I've mentioned before, whether that be reading, junk journaling, going for walks, and even watching movies, which I know sounds a little bit funny, but hear me out. Because of my deteriorating attention span, I kind of just want to force my brain to be able to focus in a particular moment in time and to just not get distracted, which has been pretty challenging for me. I always feel like whenever I watch movies, I'm still somewhat always on my phone, so I really need to find a way to control that. And with that in mind, as someone whose brain doesn't really like to rest, I love learning, and I think that's one thing I miss about university. I like learning, but I hate getting critiqued in terms of how well I learn things. And in the current field that I'm in, technology is kind of moving at a higher pace than before, and it's just gonna increase exponentially from there, especially with the rise of AI. So it's really important for me to continue to grow and learn. So currently one of my goals is to finish an AWS certification. It's actually been something that I've been procrastinating for almost a year or so now, but I really need to achieve it this year. I also want to learn a new programming language and to just kind of code, not just for the sake of work, but for enjoyment. It would be really cool to work on a personal project, but I haven't really thought of what I should work on. If you have any thoughts, let me know.